Can anyone be redeemed despite the weight of their sins? That is the question that faces My Hero Academia's most fiery hero, Endeavor. He was always forced to stand in All Might's shadow as the number 2 hero, but when he's finally thrust into the number 1 position, not earning it by overcoming All Might, but rather assuming the title by default when All Might is forced to retire, is it something that he can accept? But most importantly, is it something that the audience will ever accept? We know that he's been physically and emotionally abusive towards his wife and children. In a way, just as Endeavor can't accept the title of the number 1 hero being given to him by default, is there any way for us, the audience, to ever accept what I think most people will be comfortable labeling as a garbage person? Well, in one of the most interesting recent arcs from the manga asks this question: can Endeavor ever be redeemed? Well, let's find out, and of course, big meaty manga spoilers for any of you worried about that. So now that you've gotten your big spoiler warning, let's dive right into it. You gotta love to be gone back yet. So Endeavor has been a very interesting supporting character throughout My Hero Academia's run. Basically, he's the number 2 hero, but he gave up on ever surpassing All Might, and he came to resent him for holding the number 1 spot. A great deal of Endeavor's resentment came from the fact that he's generally not a very friendly person. He's never going to be the kind of guy who can give off the super smile and sense of encouragement that came so naturally for All Might. So because Endeavor gave up on ever improving himself, he resigned himself that if he couldn't beat All Might, then at the very least he'd breed a better successor to become the number 1 hero. So he proceeded to keep on impregnating his wife with the hopes of producing an offspring capable of one day taking up the mantle, which he believed he'd finally found in the fire and ice combo child of Shoto. But we've seen that in his pursuit of breeding the number 1 hero for the next generation, his cold demeanor kept him in a position where he largely ignored his other children because he deemed them all failures and kept on physically abusing Shoto in hopes of training him to become the hero he could never be. The physical and emotional abuse eventually caused his wife so much stress that she threw hot water on her child because he started to remind her of his cruel father giving Shoto his signature Zuko scar, and Endeavor was forced to institutionalize his wife. And so his wife is in a hospital after suffering years of emotional and physical abuse by the supposed number 2 hero. He's mistreated and been largely an absent father to all of his other children because he deemed them as inferior failures, and the one child he did pour his attention towards hates his guts so much that he actively suppresses his fire powers just to spite his dad. So how can this guy ever be a hero? Is it possible for him to redeem himself now that he's been shown to be a kind of horrible, abusive, irredeemable person? That is the question that comes up in the Pro Hero arc. Now that he's number 1, what will he do? When Endeavor finds out that he's become the number 1 hero by default, he reacts in a bitter rage, destroying all of his gym equipment, muttering to himself, "Not like this. It was never supposed to be like this." He has what he always wanted, but he never earned it. But now, thrust into the position that he always dreamed of, he's forced to reflect and change. Endeavor is never going to be a traditionally nice guy. He's always going to be a bit coarse. He's not going to be that old bag of smiles and sunshine and hugs that defined All Might's tenure as the number 1 hero. But that doesn't mean that he can't find his own way. So here Horikoshi introduces a great foil for Endeavor with the number 2 hero, Hawks. Hawks is like the ultimate millennial hero, where Endeavor is a towering mound of fiery anger and resentment. Hawks plays it loose and goes against the grain, speaking out of turn, being super casual, and rocking the boat when needed. He's first introduced when the top 10 heroes have convened for a press conference, while all the other pro heroes are giving stock answers that would be expected in PR press conference. Hawks rocks the boat by putting Endeavor on the spot, pointing out how Endeavor's approval rating are far lower than his own, and Endeavor, sporting his new costume, obviously being provoked, only has 3 words to say in response: "Just watch me." It is a mantra that defines his new resolve and resolution to take on the mantle that was thrown upon him. He will not demonstrate his changes through passive words and platitudes, but through action. And not soon after his declaration of intent, he is forced into a position where he'll have to live up to those words. While on patrol with Hawks, who warns him about an upcoming Nomu sighting, they are both attacked by High End, the most dangerous Nomo we've seen in the series so far. Wielding multiple quirks, it is an engine of destruction seeking to wreak havoc, and Endeavor is thrust into the spotlight. He burns it to ash, but that does little. It is able to fully regenerate, and as the fight escalates, Endeavor is forced to face his limitations. Unlike All Might, who fought against his crippling, diminishing strength to the very end, Endeavor is very much aware of how far he can go. He only has so much strength and speed, and even his signature fiery flames, if used for far too long or they grow too hot, can literally cook him alive, because Endeavor has always been aware of his limitations. He thought he could find other ways to push past them, through the ice-based powers of his wife, and ultimately through his children. But his fixation on strength only led towards a darker, isolated path of obsession and abuse. But with All Might gone, Endeavor could not rely on those excuses anymore. All he could do was live up to those 3 words: "Just watch me." And as he's pushed past his limits, he pays the price. The high-end beast slashes him across his face, creating a brutal gash and potentially taking out one of his eyes and leaving him crippled. And it seems like he's done. He's reached the limits of his capabilities. Just like how he gave up on improving himself and focused on forcing his ambitions on his family, it looks like this should be his end after his brief tenure as the #1 hero. But we learn from his wife that while he doesn't see her, he keeps writing her letters and even sends her favorite flowers that she'd only mentioned once. And just like how he hasn't quite given up on his family, he doesn't give up on living up to his 3-word mantra: just watch me. His son, not so. Watching him on TV expects him to run away and retreat, just like he always does, when faced with a problem he can't handle. Just like he did with his family. But his wife says that he's stubborn. Even if it looks like he's trying to take the easy way out, he's always looking to continue and find a way to move forward. Pushing through his injury, pushing through the heat limits of his body, Endeavor strikes back, lifting the creature up, burning even brighter, turning it into ash. All eyes are on him, even his family watches, with Shoto crying out that he's watching as well. And as he reaches the ground, he gets up with one fist held high in victory, signaling his role as a new great symbol. Not the loving symbol of All Might, but a new symbol of fiery determination, standing tall and fulfilling his promise, not to take up the mantle through weightless words, but through fiery action. But after facing the beast of high end, he has one more challenge, an even greater fight than facing a monstrous villain. The challenge of coming home to face his children. They treat him coldly. Shoto ignores him. His older brother, not so, bursts out in anger, saying how none of this will make up for the neglect and abuse they've suffered. Fuyumi, the sister, tries to mediate between the two brothers and their father, hoping to restore some kind of balance. But Natsu storms out, reminding him of his failures of neglect and abuse. But from this challenge, he does not falter. Endeavor, no, edgy Todoroki, can no longer run away from his weakness. Whether it's physical or emotional, his son Shoto doesn't forgive him, but does acknowledge his change in attitude, a new starting line for him trying to become a good father and make up for the sins of his past to his children, taking the harder path forward, the one that will be more difficult than facing any superpowered villain, the path of redemption. What I find especially interesting about Endeavor's redemption arc is how relevant it is to the current world we live in right now. In the wake of Me Too and cancel culture, we are at an interesting reckoning point where culturally every day we're asking the question of, can anyone ever come back? Is it possible to attain redemption in the public eye? Can anyone ever really be redeemed? Is it possible to change? With so many artists, actors, musicians, politicians having their dirty laundry aired in front of the public so we can all enjoy our pound of flesh, the question is, can you prove that you've changed? Everyone can make the same apology, but where does the line cross from PR damage control into genuine sincerity? For example, Louis C.K. apologized for his sexual indiscretions. He took time away from the public eye, losing the tremendous stand-up career he'd spent the majority of his life building up. But when he tried to come back, doing sets at small comedy clubs using the same kind of material that people had previously had no problem with before, he was destroyed, with many publications deriding the same off-color humor he'd once been praised for. I think the reason why Louis C.K. was hit especially hard, despite following all the best practices in the PR comeback playbook, was the fact that his new comedy didn't really change. Didn't feel like he learned anything or had any interest in changing or trying to become anything different. He'd hoped that his apology and time away from the public spotlight would make the larger world forget about his past indiscretions, and he could return to business as usual. But his business as usual in the eye of the larger public seemed to indicate that he never really felt sorry for anything he'd done previously. He just hoped that people had forgotten it so he could continue being the same person he'd always been. For better, or as far as the general public was concerned, for far worse. And he's generally one of the lighter offenders considering the severity of other people in this space. Another example of this is Max Landis. I used to be a big fan of his. I really enjoyed a lot of his writing and pop culture commentary, but Max had his Me Too moment around 2017 with the release of Bright, where a Twitter mob accused him of numerous cases of sexual abuse. Max went away from social media and went into exile, hoping that if he'd hid away, it'd all eventually blow over. The idea was that if he never apologized or had to address anything, then that would invalidate any of the criticism or stories about him as nothing but baseless accusations. Because people have always hated him for a very long time, and if he didn't validate and just hid, then he wouldn't have to change. But time went on and he tried to write and sell scripts, but each time news came about a new project, the cries of anger and protest would ring up louder. It wouldn't go away until it all culminated in a Daily Beast article detailing 8 separate women who'd all experienced different levels of sexual abuse at his hands. His girlfriend at the time finally left him, saying everything was true, and that he tried to use her as a shield to deflect criticism. Because of his desire to never admit guilt, to assume that he didn't need to change, eventually the cumulative sins brought everything crashing down. By not addressing his neurotic insecurities and personal demons, They eventually came to consume him.
There was like a burning building. I could go like dun-dun-dun, and no one would recognize me if I went and had to save some people. Also, do you think it would be good for my reputation if I saved some people from a burning building? Also, does anyone know how to start a fire in a building?
I've been here for an hour and he's still not here yet. Max, where are you? It's a military installation. I can't even be here. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get canceled just like you.
Start the car!
Oh my God!
Start the fucking car!
Shit!
Start the fucking car! Go! Salu, come on! Come on! Start the car! Start the car! Go! They're right behind us! They're right behind us! Fucking drive!
Because change is not fun, change is hard, especially when you live in a bubble where all your actions are always validated. Every day we're seeing the push and pull between someone's actions and their public perception, and ultimately their larger PR brand. Some come out with the standard insincere apologies, which are never accepted by the public because it always feels like the only thing they're sorry about was the fact that they got caught. Like Kevin Spacey trying to use living as an openly gay man as a way to defend and deflect against claims of predatory behavior. Some others go on the offensive, like Chris Hardwick sharing his texts as a way to deflect criticism from his past behaviors and actions. And out of all these stories in the Me Too era, there's one I find especially interesting, and that is the story of Devin Faraci. Devin Faraci was a prominent voice in the film blogging community and rising star in the early 2000s with multiple viral articles back when he was writing for Chud.com. At the height of his power, even Damon Lindelof, the venerated showrunner of Lost, admitted on a podcast to being afraid of Devin's scathing criticism of Lost, and has been quoted as saying, "Guy's been trolling me incessantly for the majority of my career. This guy owes me like $40,000 in therapy bills." This was who Devin was at his height, a guy who'd come out swinging with his hot takes and could actually get them to land. He lived the high life as a film journalist, being flown out to press junkets and becoming close friends with stars like Academy Award-winning director Guillermo del Toro. He was living the nerd fantasy life of having relationships with filmmakers and celebrities and people clamoring for his reviews and critical hot takes, even leaving behind the small movie site of Chud.com to become the managing editor of the Alamo Drafthouse new online publication, Badass Digest, which would eventually grow into Birth Movies Death. But as time went on, he went from a centrist perspective, growing into a more aggressively liberal and progressive, and still bringing the same combative attitude that let him go into the boxing ring to have his ass handed to him by indie filmmaker Joe Swanberg. And eventually the cancel culture of Me Too came for him. An old acquaintance from his grungy days in New York City accused him of sexual assault on a dance floor. While he didn't remember the incident, he tried to apologize, but that wasn't enough. Now, this is a story we've seen time and time again, but what interests me more about the story of Devin Faraci is not what happened to him, but what he did after. Because while he personally didn't remember anything, it did lay down a darker truth that has always persisted for him. And that was that he'd always been an alcoholic with a history of being blackout drunk. So instead of trying to deny or question the details of the story, he took the full brunt of the blame, and he lost everything for it. He was fired from his editorial position at Birth Movies Death and became a complete pariah. His podcast with famed film critic Amy Nicholson was canceled, his livelihood was taken away, and there was no way he'd ever be able to write for another publication. But like I said before, what makes his story unique is not what happened, but what came after. Devin went on a personal journey of self-betterment and discovery. He turned towards 12-step recovery and Buddhism to begin a journey of healing, to conquer his alcoholism, to purge himself of his more destructive habits. In seeking to reform, he didn't just simply stick with a PR-approved apology. He actively pursued a course of action to battle his inner demons and atone for his transgressions, to combat his insecurities and face his moral failings head on. In this new world, he was forced to look away from the comfort and luxuries he'd enjoyed before. He was forced to live on friends' couches, and at the ripe old age of 45, he took on a new career as a minimum wage barista and janitor to make ends meet. Forced into sometimes humiliating circumstances of meeting old film friends as he worked low-wage skills service jobs, who'd see how far he'd fallen. But rather than bemoaning his fate, he continued to persist, finding enlightenment through throwing himself into his tasks and ultimately starting to write again. He began a new site called Cinema Sagha in an attempt to try and combine his writing, love of film, and reflections of Buddhist teachings he'd embraced. In many ways, the site is a monument to his failings, an isolated blog amidst the sea of internet giants where sometimes people come by to laugh and jeer at him in the comments section. But to me, it is a small digital monastery, a monument to his failings, but also a place to reflect upon them and pursue a form of betterment. And I think this is the most important lesson of redemption arcs in both real life and fiction.
It was a stunning moment again, when she said, "I accept your amends," And the thing about grace is that you don't deserve it, and that's what makes it special. And I don't deserve to be forgiven. but at least on the phone, forgave me anyway, accepted my amends anyway.
That if you're truly looking to change, to become something better, to truly showcase what it is to walk the long, hard, lonely path of change and progress, but most importantly, anyone is capable of change as long as they are willing to try. Whether they're a 45-year-old film blogger living alone with their rescue dog, or a fictional fiery superhero in a comic. And as long as there is the will to embrace change and move forward, there is always a path to improve and seek redemption, even if the world does not acknowledge it, and even if you don't gain back the status you might have once had. As long as you accept the consequences, it's still possible to embrace that change, and there will always be a way to move forward. Welcome to My Hero Month 2019. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we're only just getting started because we got 3 more coming down the pipeline to celebrate My Hero Academia's 4th season. So before you watch the latest episode, be sure to check out my new video essay. Also, to take things to the next level and keep the celebration going year-round, I made a special My Hero Academia t-shirt to celebrate everyone's favorite fiery and far less controversial hero, Bakugo. Now this is a classy design because you don't want to be caught in public with one of those other My Hero shirts of less reputable quality that I've seen floating around on the internet. Michael, thank you for coming in on such short notice. Well, thanks for having me in. I can't wait to work at a company that offers a nice business casual dress code. Yes, we do let you come in jeans, but that t-shirt with the anime girl that says suck, 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 what exactly is that referring to? Oh, that's Toga. She's like a vampire, but not really like a vampire. She likes to suck blood to use her anime superpowers. But that blushing face implies that she probably likes sucking on something a bit more inappropriate. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to ask you to leave, Michael. Are you even Michael? You look far too attractive to be wearing that kind of shirt. No, Michael hired me off Craigslist because he thought if he could get someone pretty enough to wear the shirt that you'd think the shirt was cool and let him wear it to work. Get out. That's right, wear something you can walk around in public and not feel embarrassed about. Something that even normies will find cool. And remember to use the code MHM at checkout for a 10% discount. To get the t-shirt, just click the Teespring link down below in the store link below this video, and if you don't see that, you can also click the link in the description box or in the pinned comment. Just use the code in the promo box before you place your order. And if you want to keep the My Hero Month fun going strong, check out a special playlist at the annotations at the end of this video featuring all of my video essays focused on My Hero Academia. I promise it'll help tide you over until the next weekend, and remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.